Happy Thursday live. I am stupidly excited about today's live. Of course, for those of you submitting questions, I'm always excited about the Thursday live streams, but I'm really excited about this one. I met a guy when I was teaching for Vectric down in Texas last year at some point. Ryan was also there teaching, and Ryan got up and did a presentation about really getting a business going with your CNC, but getting a business going with your woodworking. And he motivated me to change the manner in which I run my business. I actually haven't told Ryan that yet, but he influenced me. And so I was very excited at the prospect of getting him here virtually. Ryan's in Texas, and here we are. So I'll talk a little bit about what I thought was cool is Ryan is a pretty young guy, but has got a great woodworking business going in Texas. And he's really, really, really transparent about how he got there and what the rest of us can do to be like Ryan when we grow up, which is one of my goals. So Ryan, give us a bio from you. Tell everybody what you're doing, how you're doing it, where you've been, and we'll launch into questions as we go.
Yeah. So I started my woodworking business, I guess, when I was 16 years old. So I'm 29 now. Whenever I was 16, I needed three things in life. I needed gas money, girl money, and beer money. And so I figured.
Is that the order? Is that
No,
prioritized?
well, actually, yeah. Gas money, girl money, then beer money. Yeah, that is actually the order I needed it in. And so I was welding before that. So I welded it all through middle school. I welded during the summer in Texas. Long sleeve cotton shirts, not fun to weld in when it's 105 outside. So I quickly figured out I can make more money, with a $75 miter saw from Harbor Freight than I could welding all summer for $7.25 an hour. So to turn 16, the summer I turned 16, I stopped doing that and started woodworking full time and just kept with it through high school and college. And I was the guy, I made everything for everybody, right? I was the typical, you think you're a woodworker and you're really just a handyman kind of thing. I refinished tables. I made this, I made stools, I made benches, I made picnic tables, I made cutting boards, everything. And it was doing pretty good, put me through college. But one day I got into a wreck. Truck got hit, and I was sitting there, I owed $1,100, which wasn't much, but I was in college at the time, and I couldn't afford it. I had all the nice equipment, but I was like any other woodworker, right? That killed my passion. Didn't like everything I was doing. Working for everybody else. Nobody else appreciated my hard work. They didn't care that I sanded it down to 1,000 grit and glossed it up. They just wanted something that was smooth, And so I came out with a product. I was sitting at my computer about 4:30 in the morning. I was bawling my eyes out because I couldn't do anything. I was going to quit. And this product idea came into my head, and it was a docking station. And so I made that docking station that came into my head. I had a CNC at the time. I went and cut out on the CNC, and within 6 weeks, I put it on Etsy. And within 6 weeks, we did $43,000 in sales with it in that 6-week time frame. And then after that, I said no to everything else that wasn't that docking station on Etsy. And we went from 50,000 that first year to 150 the next year to 450,000, then to 650,000. And that was all still while I was in college. So during those 4 years, we did $1 million in sales with it on Etsy. I hired my parents. And by the time I graduated college, we had 7 full-time employees. And then I came out with this piggy bank. So the docking station sales are starting to decline, came out with the piggy bank. And our first calendar year on Etsy with that piggy bank, we did $1.5 million. And so the business just kept growing. And now we have 25 full-time employees. Piggy bank is still our best seller, but it's a second close to a lot of different cutting boards and stuff like that. And what I tell people, we're just a giant hobby shop, just with a little bit more industrialized equipment.
So one of the things there's a bunch of stuff I like about Ryan, and one of the things is that he's a bootstrap guy. So he's Stop me when I go wrong with this, Ryan, but he's not like going to the SBA and getting a huge business loan to get his business going. He's taking what he's got and buying a little thing and then using the money from that to make another thing so he can buy another thing. So growing very incrementally rather than jumping in with 2 feet and getting potentially over your head on the debt side. And then two, just a very practical approach to, we talked offline about this a little bit, not saying, here's this thing I love making, I hope people buy it. It was more like an idea of what people want to buy and then how to produce that to make those people happy and part them with their money. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, but to get the business to grow. Is that, did I kind of synopsize you effectively there, Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I see, and then like, I don't like to think of myself as a, woodworking business guru or anything like that. There's a lot of people that are much more successful than me. But I will say I'm probably one of the few that started with that $75 miter saw and now for insurance the other day. So for insurance purposes, we have about $900,000 worth of equipment now. And all of that came from that $75 miter saw. And so, the way I grew went from that hobbyist mindset and made that mental shift to the business, and then had to make another mental shift to go from 5 employees to 25 employees, right? And so typically those shifts are hard to do. And what I see, the number one thing I see when the hobbyist wants to start a business, you're passionate about it, you're good at it, etc., or you know nothing about it and you think you can make money off of it. Cool, I'm not knocking it. Is they don't go customer first, they go skill set first. This is what I'm good at making, so I'm going to try to sell it now. And to me, that's always been the wrong approach. It is, what is selling? What could I make? What does the market want? And then I would go out and see if I can produce that, right? And so even now, I'm not looking at what product I can produce the best in the shop. It is what product fits the niche or the niche, however you want to pronounce it, depending on where you're at. What product fits the niche that I want to target, and then, okay, how do I make it a little bit different? And then how do I produce that in my shop using the competitive advantage that I have, right? Whether it's CNC machine, whether it's being small, like being small is a huge competitive advantage because there's a lot of things that smaller people, in a commercial garage or a small shop can do that I can't do anymore because I have too much overhead and I can't, we can't pivot that fast.
Yeah.
And so that's how I approach it now. And so I go product first, market first, then product second.
Well, we've got some questions and a number of people watching, so that's great. So let me jump in and then we'll just feel this out as we go.
Yeah.
So Lee asks, I would like to sell cutting boards at my local farmer's market. How should I approach pricing?
Yeah, so, and I have a lot of opinions about cutting boards at farmers markets too. So Lee, you may want to, I can go on about that. And on the markets, by the way, it's a funny story on the markets. I've done, my fair share of farmers markets, 20 or 30 of them. And then we went to like semi-big markets where people have to pay to get in. And then I did my fair share of markets. There's one in Houston called the Nutcracker Market where 100,000 people come through there. And the first year we did 40 grand in sales with piggy banks and cutting boards inside of it. So there's all those different levels to these markets. But I mean, cutting boards are relatively simple, right? You charge for labor, charge for materials, and that's it. So you charge for your time, charge for materials. And if you can't, it's not necessarily about the pricing, it's about the position at the market, because most people make, like, that's what I started selling at the markets as well. And so you might just be another guy that's selling the cutting boards at the market for $100, $150, $200, whether it's in grain or long grain, whatever. But I think it's more important to try to figure out a unique selling point. So let's say you're close to a college that the colors are maroon and white. Well, maybe you use a Purple Heart and a maple in your cutting board, right? And so when you charge $100 for that, right? Because that's, let's say you charge $100 for that. Then you actually have, then the customer base wants it because it's maroon and white and there's that big college tolerance, right? I mean, that big college presence. And so once again, it's not, I'm going to make some really cool cutting boards and try to sell them. It's how do I sell these cutting boards the best? And, once again, materials is pretty easy. You buy the materials. Let's say you want to make $25 an hour. I always charge what I would pay somebody to make them. And so let's say it takes you 1 hour to make a cutting board and $25 in material. So that's $50 there. And then if you want to actually commercialize it as a business, you would then mark up from there, right? So cost plus margin. And so that would be $100 cutting board. I would try to double my price. I would double the break-even cost. And so you have your materials, your labor, add that together, and then double it. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get equipment and all that stuff in the future. So, but I don't think you can price them however you want. If you don't customize them to the audience, then it's not going to do very good, right? I mean, if you have a basic kitchen size cutting board, it's beautiful, you think it's awesome, it may or may not sell no matter what price. You couldn't give it away at some of these markets. But if you have a massive one, let me scoot back. If you made a big one like this with handles on it, then the guy that walks around and does a lot of barbecuing wants a big brisket board, right? Then you can sell that one. So
for only incrementally more labor and incrementally more material,
yeah,
you have a niche product that other people don't have.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that, and I just want to context that because that's important, because there's a lot of people that talk to me that go to markets with cutting boards and don't succeed, and they just have a whole bunch of striped, nice, pretty cutting boards. And it's like, well, does the market want striped, nice, pretty cutting boards, or do they want some big gaucho ones, or these striped ones? Use Sapili if they're an orange and white team, right? Sapili and maple. So anyways, there's my 2 cents.
And I think the other thing on the cost side of stuff, that when I speak to people about this, what they forget is that you've got some physical building that maybe you're heating in the winter, you're cooling in the summer, you're buying glue, so part of the material cost is easy. I went to Rockler and I bought so many board feet of hardwood that became a cutting board, and it took me this long. But you also sanded it. So you've got disposable supplies like sandpaper and glue. You've got wear and tear on your tools, that there's X number of hours that your rigid sander is going to run, and eventually it's going to quit. And then you got to replace it with another sander. So those little factors, I think that's also an easy way for that stuff to snowball and get away from people on the pricing side, because suddenly, like, you're selling at this level when you should have been at this level, and now when your tool breaks, it's kind of what you alluded to, is you don't have the cash to replace that tool or to upgrade. So instead of a random orbit for everything, what you really should be doing is running them through a drum sander, then random orbit. And you're never going to upgrade to the drum sander if you're not making enough profit to set that money aside and buy a drum sander. So,
and George, this is so important, because this is how it snowballs, right? You make that, let's say you do the pricing right the first time, right? You make the cut, you buy the wood from Rockler, you make it, and you say you make the thing break even for $50, right? $50 in labor of your time, $50 in or $25 in labor, $25 in material, and then you try to double the price, and you go to your first farmer's market and nothing sells. And so what do? You say nobody's willing to pay me, and you lower your price, and then you sell it at cost, and then that's your price you go with, because that's what you think your products are worth. And then you just go through that snowball, and it kills your passion because you're not making any money, and then you think you are not good. But it's all because that very first thing you did was make a cutting board that a customer may not have wanted in the first place. Yeah. And so if you would have started off, I mean, like, one of our biggest sellers on Etsy right now is literally that same, it's a 2 foot long, 1 foot wide cutting board. That's it. Long grain out of walnut or maple with handles.
So easy to put together.
Yep. I just long grain, easy to put together, and I put 2 handles on it, and I sell it as a brisket board. And last year we did $250,000 with that.
It's
Like,
almost real money, man.
yeah, almost, you know, and it was like everybody else is selling cutting boards on there, but why is ours selling? Not because we're a big shop or anything like that. It's because we put handles on it and nobody else was doing that, you know, and that's it. It's still a cutting board, right? You know, we didn't put all the stripes. It's okay. Customers don't care for stripes. They want something big.
And I think so. Like in my woodworking business, I have a niche, which is I teach, I do videos, I write, I do photography for my own writing. So my advice when people come to me often is to say, you really need to look for something you have that other people don't. So with Ryan's cutting board, putting handles on the cutting board to turn it into a brisket board became something other people weren't providing. For other individuals, it might be, I have access to this material that many people don't have access to. I have access to a machine that most people don't own, and I can do things with that machine, and that could be a CNC or a laser, or maybe you're an accomplished wood turner or whatever that is. So just something like, in my experience, everybody that owns a table saw calls themselves a woodworker or a cabinet maker, and it's incredibly hard to compete with that. And I can tell you from my days of doing craft shows, the other thing that killed me was the guy my age now. You know, I was 30 at the time, and now I'm 64. The guy my age in the next booth saying, I just like doing this. And all I want to do is earn back the money I paid for the train that I made. And I'm trying to make a living off of this and competing with somebody that's selling stuff at 25% of what I'm asking, because they're not trying to make a living. They're just doing it because they like it. So you really got to find a corner that you're in, that you can be in, that other people aren't in, I think.
Oh, I would agree. I would definitely agree with that.
All right. What about, I know you have a laser. So Big Joe asks, I'd like to find out more information on laser engraving. He's asking if we've done a video, which we've not, but I think if I remember right, one of the things you do is when you sell stuff, a value added proposition is for $10 more, you can get the thing laser engraved, which is, and I think you said like 90% of your sales, they buy into the personalization that comes from engraving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have one video on my YouTube channel called CNC routers versus laser engravers, and it just kind of goes over the difference.
Oh, that'd be interesting to watch.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I made it a few years back, but it's, you know, same information. It's still really good. But yeah, I have 4 lasers currently. I have 4 lasers and 8 CNCs. So, you know, the thing about lasers.
No wonder you're at 900K in equipment.
Yeah, most of it. Right? It's most of it CNCs and lasers. Let's be real. But you know, lasers are interesting where lasers can do more things, I believe, but they're also like this is my opinion. I have both, so I can say this. Lasers are fundamentally easier to operate and more accessible, right? And
because I think, in my experience with a laser, you could think of it like a printer off your computer.
correct.
And like something you would send to the printer, you can basically send to the laser and burn it into a piece of wood or a piece of glass or whatever it is.
Yep. And they're much more user friendly. Everybody has them. And what I think of that, whenever I thought of that principle, like, okay, they're more accessible, lower barrier to entry to learn it, all this stuff. I was like, well, what's a little bit harder to figure out? CNCs. And so I went CNC first before laser because everybody had lasers and everybody was doing laser stuff. And I went, okay, well, let me do CNC stuff that a laser can't do. And then eventually I'll get a laser. That's my route of going at it. But lasers work really well. They can, you know, mark stuff, cut stuff, all of that. But you won't want to get a laser just for the fact that you buy the laser to end up making cool things. If you want to make money with it, it is, what can I make money with? And then you go get the laser, right? And so I always tell people, find somebody else with one. Most likely, if somebody else has a laser, it's not running 40 hours a week. 80 hours a week. So they'll gladly, if you throw a little bit of money their way, they'll gladly make your product or test it, right, for you. And then now you're using their laser, and before you make that big jump, it only costs you a few $100 to pay that person to laser engrave the products that you might want to sell. And if it doesn't sell, you're not sitting on $1,000 or $2,000 wasted on a laser. So, and I know a lot of people with a laser that would love somebody to pay them to run.
Well, and I feel like you could take that philosophy could sneak you into many different tools, like, and that could be you kind of think you need a bigger bandsaw to resaw with, which leads to resawing leads you to be able to do some product, and rather than just immediately going out and we're back to like, do I get an SBA loan? Do I, whatever I do, that you dip your toe in the water by finding someplace else, maybe a maker space where you can use their big bandsaw, and it's money out of your pocket, but it allows you to test the water. Same, really, whether it's a CNC or a laser or a drum sander, that I love the concept of paying somebody else a little bit of money so that you can test it and then earn the money so that you can buy the thing that you think you need.
Yeah. I mean, I went to a big cabinet shop and used their 3-head wide belt sander for a very long time. The owner didn't know I was going there, but I bought everybody else lunch that was working there, and I'd bring them brisket sandwiches, and they would sand my stuff for me during lunch break.
If you were closer to me, I'd probably work for brisket. So you're a Texas guy. I'm a Wisconsin guy. I think your brisket is better than ours. So.
Oh, I've had brisket in Wisconsin. It is definitely better here in Texas. I will say that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's something I did for quite a long time until I bought my first open-ended 16 to 32-inch open-ended drum sander, right? Until I could validate the need for it.
And you saying that, I think, is also an important thing. You went and you borrowed time on somebody's wide belt. So for those who are not aware, a wide belt sander, maybe brand name Time Saver, is a huge, probably 37-inch wide machine, runs on 3-phase electricity. You can't overfeed work through it. They're huge workhorses. So Ryan's step one was go use that someplace else, recognize the need that he needs a belt sander, didn't go out and buy an $80,000 wide belt. He bought a $1,200 1632 from
I got off of Craigslist for 800. I got off of Craigslist for 800 bucks.
So it's a little bit like wanting to lose weight. You got to watch your diet so that you don't overdo it. And he was watching his diet there by getting a sander that was better than going to use the wide belt, but not spending $11 billion on it. We're about halfway through. Let me do a couple things. One is, as always, a big thank you to Typon for sponsoring the live streams, underwriting this so that this program stays free for all of you who are watching. And then also, we did a really cool session at 11 o'clock this morning about choosing the right table saw blade for your table saw. So that was a live stream we did, which was also augmented by a saw blade buyer's guide that we put together in the recent past. So one, go look at the live stream if you're looking for help on choosing saw blades for your table saw. Two, download that buyer's guide. In that, there's information about way more than table saw blades. If you want to cut Trex lumber for your deck, if you want to cut non-ferrous metal, if you want to cut concrete, all of that information is in that saw blade buyer's guide, as well as defining alternate top bevel versus flat top grind versus what am I missing? Triple chip grind. What does a hook angle mean? So grab that buyer's guide and you'll get a lot of education there to make sure you're using the right saw blade when you go to pick a saw blade. On top of that, if you tuned in late, Ryan is live with us from his place in Texas. And then Ryan, just give us again the Cliff Notes version of who you are and why did I invite you here today? And I have no regrets, by the way. But for people who missed your bio at the beginning, give us a little version
Yeah.
of that now.
So I bought George a beer, and so he invited me on. I was kidding. Now, I started a woodworking business whenever I was 16 years old, and it put me through high school, put me through college, bought me beer money, girl money, and gas money, the three things every man needs. And, I thought of a product my sophomore year or my freshman year in college. It did, once I thought of it, I'm going to get my screen to focus on me again. Once I thought of that product, we did $50,000 in sales in the next 6 weeks. And then over the next 4 years, we did $1 million in sales with it. And then I came out with a few other products. And on Etsy alone, we've done a little over $8.5 million. So that's kind
And
of.
I'm going to, again, my experience with Ryan was just, I was very impressed. Ryan and I both taught together at a gig for Vectric, a software company down in Texas. And as a 29-year-old, Ryan has a lot of grow your business experience under his belt and a lot of really cool, ambitious, but very realistic ideas. And that's how he ended up. That's why I invited Ryan to come with us today. So here's a cool question. I like this a lot. Jim says, I just bought my first CNC, a pre-owned Shipoko, had to shoehorn it into my shop. What's the best way to get started on Etsy? One product or many products?
Good question. And that was Jim? Was it?
Yep.
Jim. So Jim, what I would say, and it's not a pitch, but I do have an Etsy course that I made. You can access it for free. Under any of my YouTube videos, there's a link. You get a 7-day free trial, and you can take the whole entire course and then hop out, never have to pay a dime. But I would focus on one product first, because on Etsy, like what happens is, and literally my course is for people with a CNC that want to start an Etsy shop. So it's very specific stuff. And about half our people have Shapokos, fun fact. But yeah, so you start with one, you don't start with many, because you're most likely, like, you're not just going to make one listing. You're going to make probably 10 listings over that one item. And so let's say it's a tape measure holder for some reason, right? This would be under tape measure holder and under guy gifts, men gift, husband gift, anniversary gift for men, 5th anniversary, groomsman gift.
So each category has to get its own photo and description.
Correct. Yeah. So each listing, you're just changing around the listing. And so you're just kind of positioning that product to all the different markets it can be under. And so like my cutting boards aren't under cutting boards. They're under chop and block, anniversary gifts, closing gifts, real estate agent gifts, right? New homeowners, couples, all of those different things. Because if you want to think about it, the best way to think about Etsy is occasion-based and Amazon is search-based. And so Etsy, you go on there for ideas. Amazon, you already know what you're looking for. And so people need more ideas on Etsy. And so I would say start with one product. And I go deep into this and I can't get into it now. We have like 20 hours of course on this. But the reason you start with only one is because you're probably going to suck at it and you're not going to be that good. And I would much rather you get better at one product very quickly than suck at 10 or 5 or 10 for a very long time. Because taking good photos is hard to do. Understanding how Etsy works is hard to do. And if you're trying to juggle 10 different balls at one time, you're not going to catch any of them. They're all going to fall to the ground. I'd much rather catch that one and figure out Etsy, how to take photos, have that product start selling, and then go from there.
So one thing that this brings to mind for me is Etsy versus Shopify versus I could build my own website that's capable of e-commerce and put stuff on there. So pick a platform and why that platform for people.
Yeah, so here's why I got on Etsy. I was a country boy. I didn't know anything. I didn't really know that much about computers or anything like that. But I knew Etsy was going to bring the traffic to me and then charge me a small fee, right? 10%, 12%, whatever. I don't necessarily care too much about it. People make a big cry about that. Cool. So if you do not know how to drive traffic to your own website and do not know how to build a website, Etsy does all that for you and they charge you 12%. That's why.
And they're collecting the tax, right? That's
Yeah, and they're doing the
your
taxes,
state
they're
and
doing the 1099s, Schedule K, K1s, all that other good stuff, right? All the fancy jazz. So if you and they don't charge, like, it's like $15 to set it up. So I always tell people, start an Etsy shop first. If you don't sell anything, you're not out anything. You're out $15 and a little bit of time. And the time that you're out is getting the good photos, writing the About Us page, all of that stuff you're going to reuse for your Facebook page, for your website, etc. And then I would do a website if your product has to have a story behind it, right? Or if you can't drive your own traffic. Or if you can drive your own traffic. So let's say I talked to this guy the other day. He's in shooting competitions with pistols, and he was making these little like gun cases, right? And so he knew of his own audience. So Etsy wouldn't be a good thing for him because he already knows how to attract his audience. So a website would be a good fit. I don't know enough people. I don't know how to attract an audience for cutting boards. So I pick Etsy because I don't know how to get that audience.
so the gun guy had a brand. He was a brand already.
Yeah.
And then he was going to capitalize on his own name
Yeah.
to sell stuff.
Well, let's say like you're big in the American Legion, right? And you're making USA flag challenge coin holders, right? Or there's amazing USA flag wall things, right? You can throw those on Etsy and they will sell good and it will work. But if you are a huge in these military organizations and wounded warriors and all that stuff, and you know how to contact those people, well, then a website might be a better fit because you know where the market's at, you know how to get them, you bring them to your website and you save that 10, 12%. But if you don't with those people, then you go on Etsy.
I'm a big fan in my business, I think this applies here. Find good people and let them do what they're good at. So an example in my case is my accountant who does my year-end taxes. Clearly I don't do those. Also does my bookkeeping. Part of the reason for that is I don't enjoy the bookkeeping part. And I know that when you're called an accountant, you're going to get the bookkeeping stuff right. So it's a little bit like Etsy thing, like what Etsy's good at. And so anyway, I'm happy to give them some of my money, my accountant, to do that work for me. Similarly with Etsy, when you talk about the percentage you're going to pay on a credit card transaction, correctly collecting the state tax, the retail tax that's germane to each of your sales, getting all that stuff figured out, same thing. I'd much rather say to Etsy, you're a rock star at this. I'll give you 12% all day, every day to get all this stuff right. So I don't have to learn one more thing in my world.
Yep. And people do worry about, what if I get kicked off of Etsy? I've heard these horror stories. It's like, well, what if you never get on there and never do any sales at all? Or what if you get on there and do $100,000 in sales and then they kick you off? It's still better than zero, like that. That's what I always tell people. Like, if that's your fear, I wouldn't say that the fear of success shouldn't stop you from like, what if I'm super successful and they kick me off? Like, well, that's okay, but that's like the number one question I get. Ryan, you're not scared of them kicking you off doing millions of dollars? Is like, one, why would they? They're making a lot of money off of me. But two, if they did, it's 10 years or 9 years down the road already. Like,
oh, because the threat being you're so focused on that revenue stream that if they chose to stop it, you'd be in trouble. Yeah. That's the threat, right? Yeah.
And that's that is correct. But what am I just not gonna ever sell in there and not make a lot of money? Yeah. Over time you can yourself, but like when people are first starting off, they don't even get on there because they're so scared. It's like
you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Yep, 100%.
Dennis asks, what were those first things that you made and sold with your $75 miter saw?
So I first started off with pallet wood and made those pallet wood wine racks. Cut a pallet in half, stick the bottles in it. My dad did have a scroll saw. I want to say that. So I used a scroll saw and cut little slots so the wine bottles, the wine glasses would fit. I was selling those, making whiskey racks, whiskey bottle cases out of the pallet wood as well. And then really I made enough of those, but you don't have to make many with free wood. to be able to afford a job site table saw. And so then I bought a job site table saw for $400, right? And I started making beer bottle cap tables. So I'd take a 2x4 legs, paint them black. I'd rip a 2x4 in half for the sides of the table, take a piece of plywood, cut that on the table saw, and then go to a local bar, get the free bottle caps from them, sort them, buy me a 6-pack, right? Sort them, or I couldn't buy me a 6. It was a local bar, okay, in the middle of the country. So I'd buy me a 6-pack, sort the bottle openers, stick them on there, and then pour epoxy over them and make domino tables. And so I was making beer bottle cap domino tables and selling them for $400 a pop. And I probably could have charged more, but to the people at the bar, all the different farmers and stuff at the bar. So it went from pallet wood stuff, anything I can make out of pallet wood, whiskey stuff goes really good with pallet wood. And then, slowly move on to the beer bottle openers or beer bottle cap.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot about epoxy when you do that.
Well, and you were country before country was cool. So that was epoxy stuff that you were doing before epoxy became the thing that like everybody's doing today. Like,
yeah,
you were ahead of your time, man.
Yeah.
All right. From YouTube, what happens when you have 3 hours labor, 3 times $25 to $40 per hour, and $25 in material? All right, I see where this is going. All right, I'm going to start over. What happens when you have 3 hours labor? So that adds up to $75 to $120, $25 in material. Can you justify charging $200 to $300? I don't know about you, but I can't make a cutting board in an hour. So I think the question here is realistic. Like at a certain price point, when you double that to make a profit, is the cost of the item exceeding the perceived value of that item? And then what do you do?
Yeah. And so here's a situation that you're in. I'm gonna go get a product and I'm gonna show this because this kind of hits that mark here, George. But here's what happens if you do not charge enough. You go, okay, I can't do it for this cost, right? It's gonna take me 3 hours, $50 in materials, and there's no way somebody's gonna buy this for $300. So I have to sell it for $200 and I make $30 on the thing, right? And then you do that, and then you start selling them. And this is best case scenario, right? You do that, you start selling them, and
at the lower price point.
At the lower price point, because that's what people can afford. And 3 years down the road, you're still doing those same things. You don't have really, you finally bought a couple tools, you scrapped together enough money. You're always having to work. You're never being able to build anything for yourself because you're always building it for other people because you're not making enough money. And then you end up hating woodworking about 3 years down the road, okay? But if you look at it realistically and go, okay, I can't do that cutting board and sell it for $300. Well, that sucks. What else can I do with my time to make something I can actually make money on? And people are like, well, I enjoy making the cutting boards. Well, if you're charging enough on this one side, you have enough free time to enjoy what you do and make stuff that you want to make. And that's like a big fallacy people don't understand is like, I'm going to kill my passion because I'm trying to make money. It's like, no. You will, by charging enough, you have the free time to enjoy making the other stuff. So like, if you make that cutting board and you go try to sell it for $300 and nobody buys it, and you positioned it the best way possible and nobody still buys it, believe it or not, there's probably 10,000 other wood products you can make that may be the right one. I mean, like those docking stations that I made them for 5 years. I don't even own one, never used one. That's not, but
a lot of people do own them.
A lot of people do. 25,000 people do. And like, once again, like, was that my passion, making docking stations? No, my passion was learning about all the different machines. It got me cool equipment. I was making stuff on the side for myself, being able to donate stuff to charities, auctions, all of that stuff, making all my cool stuff on the side while this product was making me money. And I think that's the biggest difference between like the business mindset and then the guy that's retired that wants to make stuff for fun and don't care about money. Like the two big shifts.
And I think for this question, the real bottom line out of that is if you can't make it at a profitable price point, don't make it, which is what Ryan just said.
Yeah.
Then pick something else.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that could be, how could you streamline your process? How can you get material less expensively? And that could be, sorry, Rockler, but that could be, don't go buy it in a Rockler store, buy it from a hardwood supplier, buy it direct from a sawmill, and you lower your material prices. Get 500 board feet at a time instead of 10 board feet at a time, then your price per board foot is going to automatically go down.
Yeah.
And I think the other weird phenomenon that comes out of the scenario Ryan described, which is you're selling these $200 cutting boards for an extended period of time and kind of barely making money on them. And one day your accountant says, you're losing your shirt, you're going bankrupt. Well, how can I be? I'm doing $100K a year in cutting boards, but at either a negative margin or such a low margin, you're not self-sustaining. So there's a big difference between revenue and profit. And if you're not profiting, you can't grow your tool collection. And that's the most important thing, because we all know whoever dies with the most tools wins, which clearly is going to be Ryan. But
and let me go get one thing real quick, George. I'll be right
back. I was going to say I'll read questions while Ryan's gone, but we need him to answer these next questions. So a couple things for me. One, again, thanks to Titebond for sponsoring us. Two, if you've not already seen it, grab that saw blade buyer's guide. Max is putting that right in the chat roll, the link for that. That's going to give you and there's the QR code. That's going to give you a boatload of information that'll help you make sure you're using the right saw blade for what you're trying to do. Also, as I mentioned earlier, definitions of hook angle, blade geometry, like flat top grind, alternate top bevel, triple chip, all of that stuff is in that guide. It's all going to help you pick your blades. Okay, Ryan's back. What you got?
So this is a safari bar box. Okay, so it opens up. You stick your whiskey in there, your decanters, all of that stuff. Super cool box, right? Closes up. Really cool. So on this product, this is still answering his question, right? I made this out of pine. Couldn't sell them for $200, and that's what I needed to charge, right? Couldn't sell them for $200, not even close. So then I made it out of this red oak right here, and I needed to sell them for $250. Couldn't sell them, right? So then I made them out of walnut. My material cost went up another $50, and I only needed to sell them for like $350, $400. But I started selling them for $800. So same exact product, slightly different material, which, once again, my material cost went up.
Well, a way sexier material, walnut.
Way sexier material. And so sometimes it's not necessarily the product, right? It's the positioning of the product. And so what did the customer want? The customers that are buying these wanted to put, and I ended up, engraving their ranch logos, charging $1,000 for it, putting some little pins on it. But this is me when I was like 20 years old, or 19, designing all these. Couldn't sell them out of pine, couldn't sell them out of oak, but I started selling them out of walnut, and I realized, it's all about that positioning. And so I couldn't double my money on those two, but I could triple my money on the walnut. So that's just another thing to think about when you're doing your cutting boards and just looking at it and going, well, how do I position them to sell for $300? Like, what is the customer willing to pay for? If I have to make them for 300 and sell them for 300, how do I do that?
And as a friend of mine used to often say, the sizzle sells the steak. And sometimes you gotta just find that weird, if you make it out of bird's eye maple instead of straight grain maple, so it looks sexier when you're done, but you're only paying for that probably 40% more on your material side, but you can quadruple your price and maybe now you've got a product other people don't have.
Or make the cutting board 4 inches thick instead of 1.5 inches. Labor's still the same. Material cost goes up. Now you can sell it for $300, right? 1,000 ways to skin a cat.
Ray says, marketing, question mark. Best ways to market for us garage shop builders trying to sell wooden flags, concealment cases, bottle openers. Is it social media, question mark? Etsy? You kind of answered a lot of this already. You're clearly an Etsy advocate. What do you think about people trying to grow their own social media channel to sell their stuff?
Yeah. So
I feel like it'd be a grind, a heck of a grind.
Oh, it's awful. All of them suck, right? Some of them you're in control of, some of them you're not. So Etsy, you're not in control of, and you have to get really good, and you're at their demands. I mean, social media is the same way. So, like, all of them suck. All of them, they're all decently difficult, or everybody would be doing one of the things. But if you just pick one, don't pick all of them. Like, there's a reason, like, I'm, like, even with cutting it close, I'm on YouTube. I don't try anything else. I'm pretty much primarily on YouTube. I have a little bit of Instagram and stuff like that, but YouTube is my channel. With Drapela Works, my wood company, Etsy is my channel, and that's it. Now I since then, like, recently have a couple of different ways for risk mitigation, but not for the first 8 years. So for you, it's okay. Who do I know? What skill set do I have, and who do I know? And if you know nobody within the American Legion, no veterans, nobody that actually wants that flag, then you probably have to go on Etsy. But if you know somebody that's military vet, or, is in the, disabled veterans, or I think the American Legion is always a good route, then you go there and you talk to them and you network, and then you can sell that way. I know quite a few people, and I've actually led quite a few people to sales, because American Legion would reach out to us and say, hey, we have a benefit that we want to, put this up at auction for. We'd buy it from you for $200, $300. I say, I don't make them, but I know some people who do. And they ended up buying 20 more from this guy for these other events. And so it's all about picking that one channel. But if I was starting off there, concealment furniture and all that, I mean, I'd be talking to gun shops. I'd be talking to, leaving my card there, making them a coffee table, with the concealment thing there, right? Because usually they have a couple chairs, everybody sits around and talks about guns, boom, boom. So make that for them, stick your business card on it, put stuff up on the wall. I mean, that's how I would do it. But I wouldn't do that and Etsy and a YouTube channel. And, you can't.
Pick a focus point.
Right? Pick a focus point. Yep.
And I think it's hard if you're not, I'm not very gregarious. So it's hard for me to call on a store, drop off a business card, hopefully show some pictures of my work to an owner. But you got to beat the bushes a little bit, maybe in addition to Etsy, to get something going locally, if that's the direction that you want to go. So you got to be willing. And Ryan's idea, I'm very on board with. Maybe give away something to a retail store that they're going to have on the floor, or what church isn't having a benefit or something like that. In my shop, there are always 11 billion cutting boards in the corner, and every time I'm approached about a local benefit or auction, they get a cutting board with a business card that's got my name on it. So it's just an awareness thing to let people know that that stuff is here.
Yep. 100%.
Richard asks, and I don't know, we hit this a little bit. How do you sell any cutting board for $100 to $300 when they're on Amazon for 20? Yeah.
So you don't sell it for 20. And this is back to, I believe, the very beginning of this live stream. George said, you don't know other people's situation. And this is a fallacy. So, like, you're assuming other people are making money with their price points, or they're buying the wood the same as you. And I've learned this as I've, kind of went through the thing. Most people are not running a good business and they don't know their numbers. Like, probably 80% of them, If I'm not wrong there, George, right? I mean,
Oh
if,
God, no.
yeah. I mean, if 90% of businesses go out of business in the first 5 years and you're comparing your prices to theirs, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So
You can only have a lost leader for so long.
yeah. And so you just can't feel bad about that. And once again, if it doesn't sell, then you just don't make it. Like I can sell cutting boards now, and I know people that are doing a killing doing these inlaid cutting boards and stuff like that, and they're doing really good because that's their competitive advantage, right? I can't do mass production of inlaid cutting boards because I have this massive shop, all this overhead. But if you have a laser, a CNC, and you can do some quick inlaid cutting boards, that's a good advantage. If you have cheap access to maple, now you can make really thick cutting boards with a high material cost for other people, but it's not high for you, right? And so it's not about making what everybody else is making and trying to charge what they're charging. You're never going to beat them. You just have to do what you can do and figure out a way. But yeah, like I'm on Amazon. I fight with those guys, or I'm on Amazon. I know those guys, and yeah, I don't try to beat them. It's either
And one of the things, like you've touched on from a 500,000 foot level, one of these things, and the other we haven't hit on yet, but the photography aspect. So there needs to be a differentiator. We're all on Etsy selling wooden gizmos.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes and looks at the category and they find your gizmo and you've got a really cool photo that really shows it, and not just like the thing laying on a bench, but maybe there's a hand on it and it's showing how it gets used. And so one of the things Ryan said when I saw him in Texas was the importance of capturing these really good images, that we're back to the sizzle selling the steak, that becomes a differentiator. And the other thing you haven't talked about now is, I think when people buy from you, they feel like you're giving them a handshake right through the box that showed up from the post office, because there's personalization in there. You sell a card, you send a card later that says, we hope you liked your thing, and are there any other things you need, and here's our Etsy channel. Like although you're a big company now, a pretty big company now, I think it still feels like Ryan has provided this cutting board or bank or whatever it is, and there's a lot of follow-up on your end that keeps that flow going.
Yeah, and like I think the photos, if you're selling online, you need to be very good at photos because that is everything. And y'all know as good as I do, there is no wood product that looks better in photos than it does in person. Like most of the time, it looks better in person, feels better in person, all that. I spend around 40 hours on 10 photos for Etsy products, up to 40 hours, and that's me doing the photos, figuring them out, studying them, positioning them in the best way. And my max is about the basic level of a professional photographer, be quite honest. But that's how long it takes. I spend more on the photos than I do the product design every time. Because if you don't have good photos, you can't sell a gold bar on Etsy if you don't have good photos of it. You can't sell a gold bar for $1 on Etsy if you have crappy photos.
And what a shame if you've got a great product, but you haven't captured its essence well in the photo, that you're hiding that thing and you're not going to have any success with it, only because you didn't represent it well in photography.
About half of I won't make a product if I can't take good photos of it. Like some products, you can't take good photos of them. Like if they have to be in use, or, there's a lot of cool gadgets and gizmos. And if I can't tell that story of that product in a photo, I don't make it. And that's my first test right across the board.
It's a great identifier. The other thing, and I'm not going to like specifically nail you down on this, but I want to mention for the people watching, you need to have an awareness when your garage is attached to your house and you're doing all your woodworking in your garage, and then you're going to try to grow this business side. You need to have a conversation with your insurance agent. And there are a couple things. There is such a thing as product liability, which is just what it sounds like. If you sell a thing and it adversely affects somebody, you personally want to be separated from any kind of litigation that comes from that. And I think probably because I teach woodworking in my shop, I tend to be a little overly cautious on making sure everything is protected. But you need to talk to your insurance agent about that. You need to have conversations about if suddenly I'm making money from this shop that's attached to my house, does my homeowner's insurance still cover everything that happens in that facility? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And there's a lot of aspects to that. You don't want to get caught short. There's a weird aspect to my product liability, which is I can't make kids' toys and I can't make ladders or step stools. And when they said that, I'm like, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm not going to make those things. And I could and probably pay a higher product liability. I just elect not to make that stuff because I don't want to mess with that part of my insurance. So you really need to make sure you explore that and understand it so that if something happens in your shop, which you're now commercializing, and your house burns down, your insurance company doesn't say you're no longer covered because you never told us you were running a business out of your shop. We thought that was a hobby. So you want to be aware of that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's actually a good point. I think the better point is if your house burns down and the homeowner's insurance hears you have a business running out of it, yeah, there's a high chance that they're like, oh,
you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
And it's the same with your vehicle. If you're delivering furniture you made to somebody's house in your personal truck, I mean, again, my mind being calamity driven like it is, I imagine all the worst case scenarios, but you want to know where that stands before you dip your toe in that water. Well, Ryan, we have made it to 5 o'clock Central Time, which I think is also where you are. We're still on Central Time. I do want to say this one last thing. Dennis said, Ryan is an excellent guest, great conversation and information. Awesome. So look at you hitting a home run.
Hey now. Well, be sure y'all check out Cutting It Close on YouTube if y'all guys are on YouTube.
Well, so Cutting It Close on YouTube, Cutting It Close on Instagram.
Yep.
And people can find that Etsy related class you were talking about. They can get CNC router bits from you. They can get materials. Ryan has got very cool CNC files that you can get. There's a real cool kids rocker you can cut on your CNC. Tell me again, sorry, the bamboo material is called?
Yeah, it's called BAMX.
BAMX is a crazy cool product that not just for CNC, but that you can experiment with. So go beyond what we did here, find Ryan, and check out what he's doing. He's got a lot of crazy cool stuff going on.
Yep. I appreciate you.
What other parting wisdom from you? Got anything for us?
I don't know. I think we're living in the best time ever in the history of ever to be a woodworker. I mean, you can use computers to make stuff. You can do it the old-fashioned way, and you can reach a huge audience 1,000 different ways. So I think I'm blessed to be born the time I'm born, and I think it's a gift to the world to be able to create stuff with your hands, with your mind, with cool machines and things that'll last forever. So I like to keep that in mind every day, that if I was a billionaire, I would just have a really big wood shop. So, I keep that in mind every day, and I love what I do. And I want to encourage everybody else to always remember that it's a gift.
And if I see if I can encapsulate your philosophy, which is maybe go for it, but be smart about the manner in which you go for it.
Yep.
So it's like your product selection is really where that hovers.
Yeah. And if you fail, I mean, that's okay. Woodworking's not going to kill you. You'll be all right.
All right. Well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for spending the time with us. Thanks for everybody who brought in these questions. This was a great hour. It went very fast. And Max, we are ready to check out.
All right. Thank y'all, guys.
Thanks.